Hey, folks, it's Steven. This is the Just Another Fanboy live stream. Welcome, welcome. That's what I do. You know me. I trip over my stuff. I got my Christmas tree behind me. We still haven't taken the Christmas tree down. It's gonna be up for a while because we kind of postponed our gift giving side of the holiday. So we got to keep that Christmas tree up till we got some gifts to put under it. You know what I'm saying? But enough about that. I hope a whole bunch of you are joining me this week because I have what I consider a very extra special guest. He is an MC, he is a producer, he's a musician, he's a songwriter, and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to bring him on. Mikal kHill.
Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for
Hey.
joining me on this. I'm really I was talking to my daughter about an hour ago and I was like, "Oh, I'm really nervous." She goes, "Why?" And I said, "Cuz I'm going to talk to Mikal kHill." And she goes, "Who's Mikal kHill?" And I said, "He's that one of those rappers I listen to." She goes, "Do I know any of his music?" And I said, "No, he cusses a lot in his songs, so I don't play him a lot in the car too much."
Nice.
But yeah.
Well,
So
thank you for having me on.
yeah, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Tired, but good.
Yeah. So you holding up during the pandemic?
Yeah, pretty well. Like we were talking earlier, but my job has us back in the office, so for the most part, my life is kind of like back to normal. Other than that, I have no like social life outside of work, except for on the internet, which I guess
Yep.
is not that different than
Yeah.
how things normally are.
Yep.
But
Well, okay, so I don't have any kind of order I want to do these questions in. One of the main reasons I asked you to come on is because you had announced a while back that you had a new 2 weeks notice EP that landed on Christmas, and so I thought this is a perfect opportunity to get you to come on here and talk about it.
yeah,
But you are so I have referred to you a lot when I talk about you as a nerdcore rapper. I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
that I would call you that really anymore. Do you consider yourself a nerdcore rapper?
Yeah, but it's mostly like so. The thing I've always said is like nerdcore is not really like a genre of music. It's just like a music scene. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a local music scene, but the locality is the internet. Uh, so I don't necessarily make music that a lot of people are going to think of as nerdcore, especially like my last couple projects. Um, but I have done stuff that's like way nerdier, like the stuff I did with Adam Warrock and stuff. And I get that that's how a lot of people get into me
Yep.
and find out about my stuff. So I don't shy away from that name. I haven't been using it like on like press materials or anything for a while. I'll mention it because like like Hipster Please used to write about me and stuff, and I use like blurbs from him sometimes in my bios whenever I'm sending them to events and festivals and stuff. So like it comes up, but it's not something I use to like super hard. I think that's the thing is kind of like nerdcore is not really like a style because everybody that you hear that's nerdcore kind of is completely different.
Right.
But it is like a scene, like everybody
Yeah.
knows each other and we all end up playing the same events and there's a lot of overlap with everybody's fans in the scene because nerdcore fans tend to be like really big fans because they're nerds, so they're like they track down all the different people they like and they follow everything, which is one of the definite blessings of nerdcore. But yeah, I think like especially like the 2 weeks notice record, there's not really anything inherently nerdy about it other than it's made by two nerds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did uh, discover you through Adam Warrock. I think the first thing I'd ever heard you on was his song Booster Gold,
Nice.
which is probably one of my favorite songs off that album.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I started checking you out, I think one of the first things that I grabbed onto, and you've got it right behind you, is the Retro City Rampage, which is very nerdy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just the subject and the lyrics, even the beats are
Yeah.
very nerdy.
Well,
So,
it was they came out with that Retro City Rampage game, and I was like, oh, I want to. I loved the soundtrack to it, so I got Vince Vandal, who also produced Booster Gold, and he also produced my song "The Moon." I got him. I was like, hey, can you just make me like I'll send you which songs I want you to flip into beats, but just make me some beats out of these songs. And then we did the whole thing in like 3 or 4 days, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so I mean, originally that's what you were just a nerdcore guy, but
yeah,
the more you put out, like I think your last full solo was what, Human Disaster?
yeah,
And I mean, you lean a little nerdy. You do lean
yeah,
that way. You have your feet in the nerd life. You're
yeah.
into
And
the
there,
wrestling
even
and the anime and whatnot, but
yeah, and even on that record, on Human Disaster, there's still like Nintendo sounds hidden in some of the beats that like you might not even notice until you've listened to it multiple times. I use Nintendo synths a lot for bass lines and stuff. So there's like stuff that's hidden in the songs, and there are always like punchlines. I mean, it's kind of a thing. Like all rappers are kind of nerds. They're like dudes obsessed with writing cool words. Like,
yeah.
so yeah, uh, they all kind of skew kind of nerdy. And
Yeah.
then my icon being the little cartoon kawaii heart is like all kind of nerdy.
So how'd you get started then in music? What got you started?
My dad was in bands when I was really young. Like he was in metal bands. And he had like almost like horrorcore lyrics, I guess. But I grew up listening to a lot of like Black Sabbath and stuff like that when I was really little. And then when I got into my own music, I got really into hip hop and the Beatles and stuff like that. So like, um, I think I was like 13 or 14, started making like songs on a like tape deck thing I could fake overdubs on. And then when I was like 15 or 16, I started making beats on a old Windows 3.1 machine. I figured out how to glitch sound recorder to make full length songs out of samples and stuff. And I was already teaching myself how to play guitar at that point and stuff. So I did a lot of like kind of like folk punk stuff, but with a lot of hip hop drums and sampled bass lines and stuff. And I was doing all that all through high school. I started selling cassettes in the hallway at school, and I'm old enough that that was like normal to be selling cassettes, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, and CDRs, like people used to buy CDRs from me when I worked at a record store right out of high school. Like, so all that, I kind of started making music in the early '90s when I was a teenager, and kind of never stopped, I guess. Um, but I was always like, once I had like a 4-track, I actually borrowed one from my first girlfriend's like dad that he had. I'd started making albums that way and just overdubbing myself, playing everything, and just kind of taught myself the basics. I didn't have a sampler, so I had to like learn how to actually like play a bunch of instruments that way. But yeah, and I've just kind of evolved over the years from that. I didn't really get anywhere with doing music until like around 2010 probably. We did when we did the first show we played with MC Front a lot, and then Hipster Please was there, and they wrote about us, and suddenly all these people knew we were nerdcore, and that was with my group, the Thought Criminals. And so it kind of like took off from there, and that's when I started really doing a lot of shows and touring and stuff. Other than outside Charlotte, where I'd originally came up. So yeah, it's kind of been a weird path, but
Well,
but
and
yeah.
you seem to like to collaborate a lot, because you mentioned Thought Criminals. That was
Mhm.
one of your first things, and then you've done since you've started doing your own stuff as Mikal kHill. You've also done oh good lord, what was there? I had it just a little while ago. I mean, other than 2 weeks notice, there was another one in between.
Troubleshooters.
Troubleshooters. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
Troubleshooters is me and Ant 80 from Dualcore, and I do all the beats in Troubleshooters, and we both rap. It's the same setup as what we have with 2 weeks notice, just with me and Ant 80 trading verses. And there's a lot more like computer focused, technology focused stuff and stuff about being in IT, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, in the Troubleshooter stuff, just because he's a hacker and I'm a system administrator, so it's just sort of like what we're both into. So
Yeah.
we end up talking about computer stuff a lot in the songs. Um, I try to give each one of those projects kind of like their own sound. Like 2 weeks notice is a lot more like soul samples. I actually sampled like a lot of old 70s Japanese jazz stuff on the new EP. But the first 2 weeks notice, I sampled a lot of like obscure funk stuff, especially stuff from the Southeast from where I'm from that was like rare 45s and stuff. Um, Thought Criminals kind of started out almost as like a noisier project originally when we were doing it. And it's always been the one that has the most direct like video game samples and stuff like that in it. And then my solo stuff kind of tends to be all over the place because I think probably what I'm best thought of for as solo is like it sounds like 1993 style hip hop for a lot of what I do. But then I also do like a lot of side project EPs that are like instrumental, like ambient music, or I have like a bunch of folk punk projects that I've done. My live band that I use for my solo stuff, we've been working on a project for a while that me and the keyboardist, Jessamine Thursday, we're going to trade vocal responsibilities on, stuff like that. I think like after I did Human Disaster, I was like, I didn't really want to do solo projects anymore. I was like, Human Disaster is like the best solo record I can make. It felt like, and it was like daunting to try to do that again. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to do duo projects from now on and like work with my friends. Cause it's like, it's really easy for me to work in like a pair or if I'm like writing with other people, it just flows like super fast. Whereas doing solo stuff become much more, it takes me a lot longer than it used to.
Yeah. So one of the questions I had written down was, when are we going to see something new from Mikal kHill? I guess I could just write down, maybe not for a while.
Well, actually, now all that said, I've kind of like walked that back after doing a bunch of duo projects. I started working on a solo album maybe a year or two ago. And then I kind of put it down because I worked on an EP where I used all beats from this guy, DJ Pain One, who's a producer I like a lot. And it was called Terminal. And that was the first like solo thing I had done that was rap, really, I think, after I had my cancer diagnosis a couple years ago. And it took so long to finish that solo rap EP that whenever I went to try to go back to finishing the solo album, I had started it. It just kind of like start and stopped a lot. And then I kind of got focused on the other projects. The thing I've been working on solo now is I'm working on a instrumental album that is like a soundtrack to a spaghetti Western that doesn't exist. And it's like, so far it's, other than the drums, it's all live instruments and it's me playing guitar and bass and keys and stuff. I have no idea when I'll finish that because I just kind of like do songs for it as I get inspired. But that I am working on, and I do intend to actually finish like the solo rap album I started a while back. Just kind of like go back and revisit and revise what I have so far, maybe scrap some of it. And then I do plan to finish that. And I want it to be kind of like I want it to be like the opposite of Human Disaster, I guess, because Human Disaster is like such a dark record. I really want to do like a really fun solo record that like conveys my sense of humor better, because I don't know that record did.
So you can pretty much do it all though, right? I mean, if you wanted to just do it all by yourself, you could just from start to finish.
Yeah, and I have done that. A lot of times now, Cecil Nick from the group Autocorrect, he mixes and masters most of my music, and he does a lot of post-production and works with me on some of my beats and stuff. He's kind of like my, he's really like the closest collaborator I have. The only person I really let tinker with my beats the way he does. But so usually he's involved in some capacity, but I have done whole records where I did like everything. And even some of those EPs I put out, I think the folk punk one I did, I think I did everything on that and mixed it and mastered it myself too. Like I do appreciate now in a way I didn't used to when I was younger, the actually just letting other people in to help. I think like whenever I was younger, I was like really into the idea of like I'm gonna do everything because I was obsessed with like Beck and Hayden and even like RZA, like dudes who were like doing as much of the stuff as they could in the studio on their own and like really prided themselves on that. So it took a long time to even like be comfortable letting other people mix my music because I was so like, this is mine, it's my baby. Uh, but now that I'm older, I've relaxed about it a lot, and I really enjoy getting like I love sending a song out to Cecil, and I'm like, I think this sounds good, and then hearing what's on it when I get it back because he'll fix little things I don't think about or don't hear necessarily because you're too close to the stuff. Um, so I don't know. I can appreciate collaboration in that sense now in a way that I never could when I was younger at
Yeah.
all.
Well, and technology today just makes it so much easier,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I used to be. I always say in a previous life I was a musician. I used to be from like '86. I learned how to play the drums in '86, and right away started joined a cover band and
Nice.
was playing music until about 2002. And it was much different back then. I mean, I think the last band I was in, we actually went to some dude's house and recorded a 4-song EP on his
Yeah.
computer in his home studio. But before that, we'd have to rent studio space
Yeah.
and put stuff out on tape, and
Mhm.
try to book shows and sell the tapes at the shows. And then once I got out of it and I started finding stuff like nerdcore and indie music and whatnot, I was like, man, we could have used all this stuff back then, just YouTube by itself. And then
Yeah.
other, just these places where you can just put, you can now, you can make something and put it out there for the world to hear
Mhm.
as long as you know how to use the technology.
Yeah. I think even in the 90s, like toward the end of when I was in high school, there used to be a site called Bandcamp. Or was it Bandcamp? It was GarageBand. It was GarageBand because it was before Mac had made that software. Uh, but there was a site called GarageBand, and it was run by like George Martin and a bunch of other like producers of that were all major label dudes or whatever. But they basically would let you upload a song. You had to review a certain number of songs by other people and give them constructive feedback, and then those people had to receive your feedback and they would approve whether or not it was legitimate. So you couldn't just trash something and insult people. You had to actually provide constructive feedback. And then once you had done that, then you could upload a song of your own, and then people would be able to review it too. And then they did a thing where like the whole thing was like you got to like compete for a record contract if you got high enough on the rankings or whatever. But that was like never going to happen for most people, and I don't know if it ever happened for anybody because the site ended up folding. But I thought that was a great system, and I learned a lot in that time period from that. I think that helped me a lot whenever we first started doing music, because because it was like a great way to get totally unbiased, unfiltered feedback from other musicians that were making the same
Yeah.
styles you were. Um, but that was kind of like early internet thing. Now you have Bandcamp and you can upload whole albums and stuff. But I wish there was more outlets that were like that, where it was like something fostering community for
Yeah.
like bands like that. I think we benefited massively from that in the early 2000s. I think like message boards too. Message boards were really big in the early 2000s, and that helped us a lot with like I was doing songs, and I even put out a record in like 2006. Um, there was a lot of stuff over the years, and you would get more direct feedback from people because you were in these communities of like, like hip hop fan websites and stuff. I think that's missing now, but it's kind of weird because you have way better distribution model where you can get an account with DistroKid and have your record in every online store, but you don't also have the same kind of like community building tools because Facebook and Twitter are not good for that.
Yeah. They
It's
used to
kind of
be, but
strange.
yeah.
Yeah, MySpace was great for it,
Yeah.
but way less so with Facebook and Twitter and the algorithms.
Yeah. So let's talk about 2 weeks notice, because you dropped your second one on Christmas Day, and
Yep.
that was through what was that?
Yep.
Fake Four
It was
Fridays.
yeah, it was Fake Four Incorporated is the label, and in December they give out like 4 releases through December usually. Chesky, who runs the label, he's like one of my very favorite artists of any genre, and he's also just like an awesome person. But he had asked us like 2 years ago if we wanted to release a record through them or whatever, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he followed up with me, and we had enough material already to just put it out because we had been working on a 2 weeks notice album off and on since 2015. But we ended up just like throwing everything away and making a whole new record like really fast, which was
Yeah.
basically the same process we made the first
Well, let's
2 weeks
talk
notice
about the
file.
first one. How did 2 weeks notice get together? Because it has to do with the name.
Yeah. So basically 2 weeks notice in 2015, me and Tribe One were planning to go on tour, but we still hadn't booked it. And it was the beginning of the summer. And Tribe One Niles was like, I took a job as a teacher, and I'm not gonna be able to tour anymore unless we do stuff in summer, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it then. So I was like, all right, well, like we should still try to tour. And then he was like, well, what if we just do a whole record and then book the tour while we're working on the record and then leave in 2 weeks? And I was like, and we'll just call it 2 weeks notice. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And normally Niles is like, he takes forever to write. He's usually the one, like, if we're writing in the same Google Doc, I'm done an hour before him a lot of times. So it was his idea, but he's the one who was going to have a way harder time with it. But he actually did it. We were working like 20 hours a day. Like I would get up in the morning at like 8 a.m. At the time, the only thing I was really doing was rap full time. I would get up first thing in the morning, make beats for like till sometime around 5, and then he would get on, write for a while. He'd get back off. I'd work on beats a little longer, then he'd get back on. We'd write until we went to bed. And we did that like every day for a week, and then Cecil mixed it all, and we were done with the record. And I think it still stands as like one of my best releases. Um, my two best solo albums are Snuggle Is Real and Human Disaster, and 2 weeks notice actually came out between those two. So, and like I was working on Human Disaster while we made 2 weeks notice pretty much. So
So there's the cover. I don't know if you can
yeah.
see that. There's the cover, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me till today. But I had both this one and the new one on rotation, and I just happened to look down at one point, and I said, there's quite a similarity
Yeah.
between those two covers. It's two people looking at a fire. Is there
Yeah.
what's the story behind that?
So the first one is the first album, the cover. I'm trying to remember for sure because one thing that I really like doing is I look for old books that have fallen into public domain and I look at their illustrations, and then I'll like try to use some of that stuff for artwork. So the cover is actually redone by an artist named Dominic Prestera. He did both 2 weeks notice releases. And at the time when he did the first one, he was actually working for Archer as like a background artist. But basically, both instances has something to do with work. This one is a giant factory fire that is some factory burned to the ground in the 1800s. And the little two guys up front are supposed to be us, basically. I think there were more people in the original image from the book, and then we just had Dominic cut them all out and leave us standing there. The other one is whaling ships that are trapped in the ice, and these two dudes basically escaped to the shore, and they're watching the boats burn from the shore. I don't know what the story is deeper than that, but it just seemed perfect for what we were doing.
Nice.
We had the cover for that for a while. So
Yeah, I just noticed that today. I was looking down. I'm like, okay, now which one is this off of? Well, there's a fire on the phone. What? And then I'm not the fastest tool in the shed, so it took me a moment, but
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of interesting.
that was definitely the idea. Uh, Basically, just people at work watching their workplace burn down. Basically, when we named it 2 weeks notice too, like we knew Niles had took this job that was going to make it way harder to do music and stuff. So we didn't really know what the future was going to look like for that stuff. So there was definitely an element of that. We wanted people to kind of wonder, like, does this mean they're quitting or whatever?
Yeah.
Obviously, we weren't. Niles hasn't released anything since I think 2016, but
Well, somebody took his name.
he's been talking about changing his music name for a while to Niles Gray, and just using his legal name. But yeah, he works very slowly, so it is whenever he's working on a solo album, it takes forever. But he has a group called Malibu Shark Attack,
Yeah.
um, and they're working on an album they've been working on off and on for years. And he's also, I think it's some producer from Italy that Niles is working with. He's got a rap album mostly finished that uh, I don't know when he plans to release it though. Um, Kind of the one thing with the COVID stuff is it kind of like delayed a lot of the stuff we were working on. We weren't sure if we were going to stick to the same release schedules and stuff. I produced 2 EPs for Int80 from Dualcore, and those are actually extremely nerdy. uh, those I think are finally coming out in January, but we had originally finished them in like May. And would have normally released them in June at the latest, with that
S-
being the case.
So, what does that mean to produce? You said you produce it. What does that mean? What does that entail?
So basically, it means to create the music. Produce means different things depending on different styles of music, though. Like if you're a producer in rap, it almost always means that you are a songwriter who is handling the music side of the song. Um, and that might mean you're just chopping up samples. I mean, and that could mean just looping a sample if that's all you do to it, or it could mean something super intricate. It could mean playing a whole bunch of live instruments. It kind of changes, and even for me, it changes like all the time. I don't consistently make music in one way, so I do a lot of like sampling. I do a lot of live instruments. I do a lot of mixing the two. So um, yeah, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. In other styles of music, the producer is frequently like the person picking songs for the band to use on an album and to record. Like if you go back to like the 60s, it might be them like straight up telling the band what songs they had to play and record in the studio. But if you're looking at like, like in the Beatles, the producer was a guy that wrote all the string parts and like kept them on task in the studio. Um, so it kind of depends on what you mean, but in terms of rap,
Yeah.
it's basically a songwriter that just focuses on the music side.
So, when you write a song,
Mhm.
what typically comes first for you? Is it the beat or the words?
Um, Pretty much always the beat nowadays. Uh, I used to sometimes write lyrics first, especially like 10 years ago. Like I did that a lot. Um, but I haven't done it that way in a really long time. It's almost
Yeah.
always the beat comes first now. Even if it's sometimes I might write to a different beat and then change what the instrumental is and write it around the words I created for something.
Yeah.
But usually I create the music first nowadays.
How about with 2 weeks notice? Did when you guys start writing, you were doing the beat, so would you just put something kind of basic together,
Yeah,
um, and then
although
as you're adding more to it, then you and Niles are writing lyrics, or
well, kind of the way I tend to work most of the time, the beat's pretty much totally finished by the time we start writing to it. If it's a project that I'm doing, there's sometimes where I'll like change the beat around what we wrote, and I think I even did that with uh, "Can't Hold Us Down" on the EP. I think I did that where I kind of changed the beat around what we had written originally. But a lot of times I'm totally finished. I kind of like I pride myself on kind of being like a speed runner, but for making beats. I have like a really streamlined process, and usually it doesn't take me a real long time to make a beat. Um, and like when we did the No Friends family reunion, which No Friends is like my rap crew or whatever, we do these big events every like 5 years called the No Friends family reunion. And the last one we did talks at it, kind of like a conference, and I demonstrated to people how to create a beat. And in less than 30 minutes, I created a beat beginning to end, and then had somebody come up and freestyle on it, like all in one big go. So that's kind of like a thing for me. I really like working fast, and kind of the way my brain works. Like I need to work fast, or I'll lose the narrative. Um, so yeah, usually like when we sit down to write the 2 weeks notice stuff, I had the beats pretty much already made. The only things that might change is like length. Uh, and I think Niles might have asked me to like make like the chorus a little different or something. He'll do something like that. Like he'll be like, "Hey, can you like make something to make the chorus stand out a little more as the chorus?" And I'll go back and change things around or whatever. So he definitely has input on that. If like there's something he thinks will make the beat stronger, like change the drums or whatever the case might be, then I'll go back sometimes and do that. And then Cecil kind of like comes behind and looks at everything, and then he'll change stuff too. So he actually added bass line. He played bass on, I can't remember which song title it was that he played bass on, but he plays bass on one of the songs on the record, and he sang some extra choral vocals on a different one.
And
So,
is Cecil watching? We got this early on from a Cecil.
oh yeah, that
Yeah,
that would be Cecil if he's
that,
still watching. Yeah, that is Cecil. Cecil is a he's he plays a couple different instruments, and he's a producer. He's like his group Autocorrect kind of started out as like a really avant-garde project. When I first met Cecil, he was doing like straight up nerdcore stuff. He had like a song about Toxic Avenger and stuff like that. And that stuff was fun, but then he kind of like got way more personal, and that's always my jam, like more introspective stuff. And
so
then
that was autocorrect on Christmas Day on the fake four Friday. Is that
yes,
right? Was that
that,
him? Was
so
that
normally,
Cecil?
yeah, that was Cecil. Normally, autocorrect is actually like four people,
Mm.
sometimes five, and they are like a live band. Uh, some people are just playing samplers, some people playing guitar, and they have a dude that plays keys and bass and a bunch of other instruments. Moses, who's like an amazing musician. So they have like a bunch of people in the band too. So autocorrect's not really like a solo project. It's like a more collaborative effort than
Yeah.
uh, my production style. I don't think I could. I don't know if I could work in the way he does with that. Like I think their results are great, but I have like a hard time. I think partially probably because I'm like musically illiterate in a lot of ways. I know how to play all these different instruments, and I can write songs, and I do everything by ear more or less. Though I don't know how to read sheet music, and I can't even read guitar tablature, which is like it's like baby's first sheet music basically. I can't even read that.
Yeah.
And it's impossible for me to translate the numbers into music. I don't know why, um, but I kind of do everything by feel and whatever, which Cecil gives me shit about, but
My only experience in songwriting was the you know back when I was a musician, and what we would do is two different bands did it two different ways. There was a four piece I was in, and one of the one of the three other guys, we had a singer, a guitar player, and a bass player. They'd show up to practice, and they'd go, "Hey, I got this riff," and then
yeah,
by the end of the night, we'd have a song written without lyrics. We'd have all
yeah,
the music written. And then the another band I was in, it was a three piece, and our bass player was the singer, and he pretty much he wrote most everything. He would come to practice with something that he had used a drum machine on, and he'd
mhm,
already have the song on like a little tape deck, and he'd go, "This is a new song I wrote," and then we would just pick it up
Yeah.
there at the at practice. But
Yeah.
being a being a drummer, I didn't. Other than doing my drum parts, I didn't have a lot of say in
Yeah.
the
Well,
songwriting.
with my live band, like a lot of times it is I bring in projects where I've like done most of the parts. My guitarist Andy is like crazy good guitarist. He's all over both of my solo albums. And he's really good at like finding like good arrangements inside of what I've already done. And Slappy Jessamine is like a great keyboardist. They're both like way more technical musicians than me, so which is good, but we're like a small enough group that it doesn't become like difficult to work together. And they don't have to. They rein me in when I get too crazy sometimes, but like for the most part, it's pretty seamless. And we do work on like one of the vanity projects I did is actually I wrote like 3 songs with them that were instrumentals all at once in one go on Black Friday one year when they came and stayed at my house. Um, so I can work in like a band thing. I think like I tend to have like really conventional song structure. I think like with autocorrect, they are way more experimental with what they do, which like I'm just not. I'm always like a verse chorus, maybe have a middle eight, you know, type of person. But I think it's just like years of listening to lots of like punk and Beatles and like pop music. I just really like conventional song
Yeah.
structure.
Verse chorus, guitar solo, maybe a break,
Yeah,
chorus end. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
So no, go ahead.
so we are actually like my band and me are actually working on a record, or we were before the pandemic started, because now we can't get together and write the way we were. So it kind of got like backburnered, but I'm hoping we can actually finish that this year. It's like a Portishead type project we started working on.
So let's talk about how the pandemic has changed things up for you this year. I know that at one time, like with the bigger named acts, like a national act, they make all their money touring. They don't really
Mm.
make anything off album sales. Is that the same thing for an indie?
Well, I don't tour like I used to. I used to tour a lot. Me and Adam Warrock toured a lot. Me and Tribe One toured a lot. Me and Sean from Thought Criminals, we did a couple tours together. So I used to tour a lot. I haven't toured a lot since like 2015, probably maybe 2014. I do a lot of like hacker events and stuff, one-off like mini tours, or I used to. Um, Me and 80 from Dualcore do a lot of shows that are at conferences though, and I usually do at least like one a month, and those do like supplement my income usually, especially like DEF CON. The first year I went there, I sold like we brought 200 copies of an EP that wasn't out yet, and we sold them all at DEF CON one year in like 3 days. So like some of those events are great for that stuff. Some of them I don't even bring merch to because it's like people don't have the cash, and you're at a hacker conference, so they don't want to
Yeah.
run their credit card off your phone anyway. Uh, so you know, like it just kind of depends. And some of the events pay really well, some of them don't. You know, it just kind of depends on what it is and what how big the event is and stuff. Um, that stuff to me was more like an emotional bread and butter thing where I've kind of like become cognizant of like I was used to doing shows like on a monthly basis, getting on a plane, flying somewhere, doing a show, having the crowd be super dope, and then fly back home, and like not having that and just being in isolation for like a year. Basically, my last show was in January of last year. That's like crazy, like unheard of. This is the first time in over a decade that I've went this long without playing in front of a crowd. Um, and I don't think I really realized how much like my emotional well-being like hinged on that.
Yeah.
It's like its own weird kind of therapy. So, yeah, it's definitely been difficult to say the least. to not have those shows. And it like from a money standpoint, yes, but more from just like a like how I feel
Yeah.
standpoint. It's an outlet that I've just like not had for a year that I've had for so long.
And that, I mean, and that can have an effect all over. I mean, that could affect you to, when it comes to even just writing new stuff.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
if you're not getting pumped going out there to play the new stuff for people,
yeah.
you may not want to write the new stuff.
Well, that was like a it was a thing. It took a long time to actually sit down and write stuff once it started because it was like um, you weren't like having experiences. Like you're stuck in your house.
Yeah.
And when I was working from home for 4 or 5 months, I didn't leave the house at all. I just worked from my house. I would sit on my deck sometimes and work from there, but I wasn't like going anywhere. My kids haven't been to school in over a year, I guess. This kind of all came off the tail end of like the school being closed over like weather stuff and different things like that. So it's been like my kids haven't left the house in so long. My wife barely leaves the house except for to go like get supplies. I'm back in the office, so I go to work some and stuff,
Yeah.
but it's weird. Like whenever I first came to where I'm working now, like I was like, oh well, I'll explore the area, and I always like to check out like independent businesses, like restaurants and stuff when I move somewhere new. But I couldn't do any of that. I just like got here, and then I was like, oh well, I guess I just have to sit in my house. You cannot do
Yeah.
anything. So yeah, it was difficult to like get inspired whenever you're not having like experiences. It feels
I mean,
like every day feels like the day before is Groundhog Day.
yeah. How many kids you got?
Two.
Ages?
My daughter is 12, or wait, no, she just turned 13 in September, and my son will be 10 this month.
They
So,
holding up okay?
the pandemic has been rough on them. I
Yeah.
think like my daughter does better with not being around people, but my son really needs social interaction in a way I can't relate to, I guess. And my wife is very much an introvert, so she's like my life hasn't changed that much other than we just don't get to have people over on the weekends anymore. But her Monday to Friday, she's not normally interacting with people anyway.
Yeah.
It's just that like the kids being stuck at home with her and being stir crazy. That's rough.
Yep. Yeah, I'm working from home. I got three kids. The oldest is 18, youngest is 15, and my oldest, my son, he spends most of his time. He's got his crew that he
Hmm.
gets on Discord with and spends most of his day just chatting with them and listening to music and talking about music and all that junk. So he actually he's the he I we just heard about MF Doom,
Yeah.
and I feel like a big sap because I'd never heard of this guy before.
Really?
Um,
Oh
well,
man.
you got to understand, I'm from small town Kansas,
Yeah.
so any hip hop that I was ever uh, that I would ever see came from Yo MTV Raps. That was it.
Yeah.
There's not even really a
It's
lot of
funny.
local radio that plays that, but
Yeah, with Doom, there was so much rap I got into, like the early 2000s, late 90s were like kind of this golden era for indie rap where it was, I mean, it was a very punk rock scene. Um, and there's still a lot of those guys still making stuff. I mean, LP was in Company Flow back then, and uh, now he's in Run the Jewels and huge. But uh, I was always kind of digging for that stuff. I would just buy stuff because of the way the cover looked. Just finding like indie rap stuff that was on weird labels. And in the late '90s, I worked in a record store too, so I was like reaching
yeah,
out to. I would reach out to indie labels and be like, "Hey, I worked for a corporate record store chain, but I'm a key holder and I get to pick what goes in listening stations. Send me promos and I'll put them in listening stations and try to order your stuff into the store if the management will let me." So there was a lot of stuff like that I found out that way. And I was always good at tracking down bands, even whenever that was harder to do. Nowadays, you can, you know, go on Spotify and find all these obscure bands or whatever. But back then, wasn't really the same. But Doom was like, you know, kind of proto nerdcore guy, I guess. Wore the Victor Von Doom mask and
Yeah.
with a green hoodie on, and like the covers like Doom with the like a mic drawn straight up comic panel. So that stuff was like immediately interesting to me. And he had a group called KMD that had worked with Third Base in the '90s too. So, but Doom was definitely like, I love that kind of like gritty lo-fi stuff he was doing, the early stuff, and it was just a very punk attitude about making hip hop music. Um, so that and Deltron, I think like really like for a lot of people that are in nerdcore that are my age anyway, and a lot of the older like first generation nerdcore stuff, like you probably be able to trace a lot of influence to Del, the Funky Homo Sapien, and the project Deltron 3030 and MF Doom and his like Victor Vaughn record and the King Ghidorah stuff he did, like all that stuff. I think it was like a huge impact on people that ended up being nerdcore rappers.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's like it's very much like it's pure hip hop, and they never considered themselves part of like any nerdcore scene. Um, but yeah, it was still like a nerdy element to it. It didn't shy away from it. I mean, there's a song on Doom's first record where he's just straight up rapping over the Scooby Doo stuff he looped. It's got like chops of the like hey from the Scooby, where are you? It's got the hey chopped into the beat
Yeah.
in like a cool way.
I
Um,
definitely need to check him out. My son was talking about it when it was released that he had passed away over a month ago,
yeah,
and I said, "Well, let me check this guy out," because Simon said, "I think you'd really like him, Dad." And so I just looked him up, and I said, "This is a guy that raps with the freaking Doom mask on. Where the hell
yeah,
have I been?" You know? And
yeah. The Mad
so
Villainy record, I really recommend that. And the first Victor Vaughn record is really good too. Um, he's definitely a really big influence on me. Whenever I get like writer's block, I'll put on an MF Doom record
yeah,
and listen to it, and it always gets me going after a while. He always has like, you know, like you could criticize that he more or less has the same flow on every song. He never really changes out how he raps, but his wordplay and his references are so dense. There's just like so much to pick apart in what he's saying, and it'll sound. I guess it's kind of like the Bruce Springsteen thing, where it's more complicated than it sounds like it is at first listen. But it's like that, but for just the words. Like there's always a lot going on in his wordplay.
so where do I start? Give me an album.
I would say Mad Villainy is the one. Like Mad Villainy to me is it's a album with no singles. There's almost no choruses on the whole album,
Yeah.
and it's a record made mostly out of like weird jazz samples. And it's a collaboration with him and another producer. And Operation Doomsday is another solo album of his. Operation Doomsday is kind of all over the place quality wise, but it has some of my very favorite songs of his on it for sure.
Okay.
But Mad Villainy is a great place to start. That record is to me one I can just like listen to over and over again.
All right. I will definitely check it out because
Yeah.
I think the one song I listened to after I looked him up was "Rap Snitches," and that
Yeah.
was I was kind of digging that. So
That album's a good album too.
yeah.
The Food record is good. Yeah. That's kind of
So
like the whole concept of that album is like working in food things into every song.
yeah. So if anybody's watching live, if y'all got any questions for Mikal kHill, please feel free put in your questions and comments. We'll get them up on the screen. Um, let me ask you this. This may be kind of like one of those which is your favorite kid type of questions, but
Mm,
what songs have you done,
mm.
whether it's something you've collaborated on or something you've done all on your own? What are some of them that you're probably the most proud of?
Uh, it's kind of hard to pick. I guess like I think Get There off of Human Disaster is like a real high point of both production and um I don't love my verses on that totally, but the production and the hooks, like I love Chesky's rapping part on that in particular. I think I love the moon because of the chorus. It's such a stupid chorus, but it's like so much fun to do live. Uh, I love um, Long Week off of Human Disaster.
It's one of my favorites.
Um, Shut It Down, well, or Shut Down Dash H Now from the Troubleshooters, which I kind of wrote that song. That's all live instruments. Like it's like a real guitar heavy song, but I wrote it specifically for me and Aunt 80 to do at hacker conferences. Because like, who gonna shut it down? We gonna shut it down, and the crowd always goes back and forth with us. It's like I love David's verses on that. Um, I Remember Now by the Thought Criminals. That's like one. Uh, Objects in Space with Adam Warrock. I don't rap on that one. I just did the beat, but it's like one of my favorite beats I've ever made and one of my favorite raps he's ever done. I feel like I'm forgetting something off of me and Adam Warrock. I produced his last EP before he retired, and every beat that is on that record was originally intended for Human Disaster.
Which
and
EP was which EP
uh,
was that?
Gifted Student, which was the
Okay,
last thing
yeah,
he released before he quit.
yeah.
Um, all the beats on that were originally for Human Disaster, and even at least two of them had words on them, and they were recorded. Even I should dig those up at some point and just
So
release
you
them
give
to the
that stuff
Patreon or
away, and then he just stops rapping.
something. Yeah, yeah. Well, he paid me for it at least.
Well, that's good.
He So yeah, Adam Warrock was one of the original members of No Friends, which is my rap crew. Which is Adam Warrock is still technically in it, but he's retired, so he's not also. But it's Cecil Nick from Autocorrect, Aunt 80 from Dualcore, Sulfur, who is also in Thought Criminals with me, and Tribe One, who is also in 2 Weeks Notice with me. Um, but everybody who's in the group, more or less, like has carte blanche to get beats from me, and like so I end up producing for everybody in the group at this point, and that's kind of like the only people I'm guaranteed to produce for. I really like producing for Lex, the Lexicon artist. We've done a couple songs together now, but for the most part, like I don't really like doing beats for people. Like you're just kind of like giving away. I don't know. I'm always like I could be using this, so I'm not letting you use it. I do like collaborating with people. I like rapping on their stuff, and I do like I like producing for people whenever the workflow is good, but it so rarely is satisfying the way it is with like everybody in No Friends. It's a really we have a workflow, and with Lex, the Lexicon artist, I really like working with her, um, because they are like they don't even need a producer. They can play instruments and stuff. And one of the things with Lex is she'll like send me a song that'll already have instruments all over it, and she'll be like, "This is these are the parts I've already written." And I'm like, "Well, what the fuck do you need me for? Like, you already did everything." Like, but that also is like she's had me just do like session musician stuff where she wrote a bunch of parts and had me play guitar on one of the songs on her last record. I really enjoy the back and forth with them. Um, but I'm like, whenever I work with people and sometimes they're like, they want a million changes and it's just like endless back and forth. I'm always like, you wanted a Mikal kHill beat, but you keep like, seems like you want a different somebody else's beat that you just want me to hammer my beat into.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I like producing for those people, and I have done so many songs. It's like hard to even pick like favorites because there's just so much material that I've done.
Well,
I mean,
I can tell you two of my favorites.
mhm.
Probably my top favorite Mikal kHill song, and one of my favorite songs of all time is Always. And
Oh,
I know I've told you that before.
yeah,
Um, That's just that. I tell you what, I will play that for people,
Mhm.
and we'll listen to it, and they'll be like, "Wow, man, that was really good. That's really beautiful." And I said, "It's about Severus Snape," and they'll go, "What?" I said,
It's
"Yeah,
like it's such a really personal song, and that honestly, I wrote like it is based on that, but it's also like really personal and in a
yeah."
way
It That's
it'd be
what's great
hard to,
about it,
yeah. I
because it doesn't.
rewrote
You
it
don't
so
have
many
to know
times.
that. You don't have to know who it's about. It
Yeah,
could be
yeah,
about anybody. That's what's so great
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, all the nerdcore stuff, like the stuff I tend to like the most, and I think MC Frontalight's really good about that. Actually, he'll do songs that are about a thing, but you'll have no idea, and you don't need to. It's still just a good song.
Yeah.
Um, that one, I took a lot of time to do that one because uh, when we did the Slither House mixtape, it was more or less there was only two songs we had on it that didn't have both of us on it rapping, and that was my solo track, and his solo track was God, what was it? Is it the one about Bellatrix? Maybe I can't remember. But we each had like one totally solo song on it, and I remade that beat and that the raps like multiple times because I just kept being like, and I never do that. Like usually, if something doesn't click on the first try, and I'm just not happy with it, I throw the whole thing away. I don't spend a lot of time like revising ever. I'll just start over and make something different if something isn't working. But that song was like important to me to get. I loved that piece of the score, and I loved like subject matter, so I kept writing it and rewriting it.
Well, I like the vocal part in the chorus. It always
Mm.
you've done that on at least one other song. There's just this vocal part that reminds me of the song that they play during the opening credits of Chasing Amy. You ever
Mm.
seen that movie?
I have, but it has been. I have not watched
There's a,
it
this
in
that
like
like bow,
15
bow, bow,
years.
bow, 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 and then they just it's just this, it's a vocal part, but that's not words. It's just they're just like
Oh yeah,
and it totally
I do that a
reminds me.
lot. I
Yeah,
definitely do that a
I
lot.
love it. I love it.
It's definitely something I think I cribbed from listening to Beatles records and
Yeah,
when I was a kid. I'm big on like big vocal parts as an instrument.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
when people use those as like melody samples too, and like in rap beats and stuff.
But as far as a couple of my other favorite Michael Kill songs are,
Mm.
"It's All Right," "To Hate Your Effing Life." Love that song. Love it. I
Yeah,
just
that's a
love
favorite of
the
mine too.
idea of just, you know what? If you want to be depressed, that's fine. Don't
Yeah,
let anybody give you any crap about that.
yeah,
You'd be you and you do what you got to do. I
yep,
love that. And then of course, being a father myself, I love Daddy Works. I love that song as well.
yeah. Daddy Works. So like Human Disaster was actually like I started writing songs for it in like 2011, 2012, and then it didn't come out till 2016. That was like one of the first ones I wrote, and I wrote it about one of my tours where I left to go drive to New York. I was driving in the snow, driving to New York from my house in Kannapolis, which is near Charlotte, where I used to live. And my daughter calling me while I'm like driving through ice, and she's like, "Come home, play Super Meat Boy." I'm like, "I can't come home. I have to go do the show. Like,
Yeah.
this is my job." Um, but yeah, that one is one that I've never done it live. It's like one I know I should do live, but it's like too emotional. I'll probably end up crying on stage.
And where does the vocal part in the chorus, where does that come from?
Well, if anybody asks, I totally created it, but the sample is actually from a Nancy Sinatra record,
Okay, that's who I thought it was.
and the song is called "Drummer Man,"
Yeah.
and the drummer who's on it is this like legendary session musician, and I cannot remember his name to save my life right now. But I basically like layered different parts of the song over each other, and there's like a huge part in the song that's just him drumming. So like it was like
That's
perfect for
Yeah,
doing.
that's one of my, I mean, I love the subject matter of the song. I really like the part where you say, "I do this for you. I do this for us. I do it for myself, but it's not all selfish." I
Yeah.
like that part, but the beat in that song, especially
Mhm.
after it kicks in and then it's just the drum,
Yeah. Uh,
that that feels, as a drummer, that just feels good in my soul when
yeah,
I hear that.
that is definitely one that's like one of my favorites. I actually used to start whenever me and Adam Warrock would tour. When we did comic shop shows, I didn't do it, but when we were playing in venues, I would start my set by just playing that song while I got my stuff set up, and then when the song finished, like the sample, like I would play the original song sampled because the original song basically about this is about this dude who's a drummer and he's really good, but he's not getting anywhere with it, and like his family's like struggling while he's like chasing this dream.
Yeah.
Basically the same thing. It sounds like it's about when you're listening to the song. Um, it's like probably one of my favorite songs, period, though. Like the original sample. I have a
Yeah,
hard
for sure.
time normally working with music that I'm a fan of,
Yeah.
which is like that's why I end up like a lot of times when I get somebody else to make a beat out of something for me, I could do it myself, but it's just like really hard for me to pick and choose parts whenever I'm like a really big fan and attached to the music already.
Yeah.
Um, which is why like I the Retro City Rampage EP, I got Vince Vandal to produce that and stuff like that. I end up doing those kind of projects because it's like hard for me to sample something once I'm too close to the source material.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap this up, I included in the show notes in the on the YouTube channel. I've got your website. I've got your the Bandcamp website. I've got your Facebook. I got your Twitter.
Mhm.
Uh, Anywhere else you want to direct people to?
My actual like link to my website is howcouldyoudothisto.me, and that has like links to everything on it
Yeah.
in one place if people want to go there. It's like basically my old I think it takes you to my old Tumblr blog, which is set up to be my website. So that's a good place to go. It's got like everything. And if you go to my Instagram, which is just at my rap name, it'll there's a link in my bio that takes you to everything too.
Okay. And what can we look forward to? You said you're working on a couple of different things.
Yeah, so the next thing I know for sure is coming out is the N80 EPs. I don't know if he's announced publicly what they're about. I think he has though. The EPs are called Loyalty. It's Loyalty One and Loyalty Two. And I guess I'll just say it. I think he'd be all right with me telling people since it's coming out soon. But it's basically EPs where I made all the beats out of samples from the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood soundtrack, and all the songs are indirectly inspired by that anime, which is like his favorite anime. I had never watched it before. He was like, "Hey, like, watch a couple episodes of this and tell me if you'd be interested in making these EPs with me," because we were already working on troubleshooter stuff, and he wanted to do like a solo project. Um, and I watched like before the end of the first episode was over. I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is amazing. Like, I'm super in." And I finished watching. Me and my whole family watched the whole series straight through in like a week or two, and then I made all the beats. But I'm really excited for that. That is, I think that's some of my best beats I've ever done. And it's some of the 80s best rapping. I think people are going to be uh, really into it when they hear it. He does a lot of crazy fast rapping on this record. And I think people are going to like it. I love it. So that I know for sure is the next thing. We are planning to expand the 2 weeks notice EP into an album. We actually had some other songs we had started, but we just need choruses and stuff. So we originally were hoping we could actually get the whole album done by Christmas, but we just kind of ran out of time. Um, so hopefully in January that'll probably come out, and when it comes out on Spotify and stuff, it's going to be a full album instead of just an EP.
And what's the
Um,
name of it?
that's the a calm measured response record.
Okay.
It'll just be the calm measured response LP instead of EP. Um, and then as far as my solo album goes, I don't really know for sure when that'll come out. At sometime this year for sure, but I don't know when. Probably sometime late summer, something like that. But we will see. We're also working on a No Friends record, which we've been working on off and on. I think we have enough material written for 2 records, but we haven't recorded any of it. We just have the beats and wrote the words. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll actually finish that this year. I hope. We'll see. It's
All right.
it's weirder when everybody's in different places and pandemic
Yeah, but
mode. So.
but do you typically, I mean, because everybody's in different areas of the country, right? I mean,
Mhm.
typically when you guys put something together, when you collaborate, you're doing it all remotely.
Yep.
And
So,
so
but basically the big thing with all the No Friends projects we write together at the same time.
how
Um,
does that just seems weird to me. How does that work? How do you guys decide like, okay, I'm gonna do the first 8 bars in the first verse, and then you do, how does that all come about?
uh, it just depends. Sometimes we'll like with 2 weeks notice, me and Tribe One and get on webcam. We'll just talk about shit for a while and catch up, and then while we're just chatting, usually we'll have like a pool of beats I've put in that I think are appropriate, and then we'll both kind of be listening for one of them to grab us, and then somebody will come up with a concept of what we want the song to be about, and then we open a Google Doc. We both open the same Google Doc on from our different locations, and we both start kind of writing stuff. Um, Usually with the group projects, the big thing that decides who is gonna go second or last just depends on who is gonna have the best closing lines. If somebody comes up with something that feels like a good way to close the song, then they just wind up being the one that does. And usually there's not a lot of bickering or back and forth on that. Usually, I think we're all pretty comfortable and competent in our abilities to a point where it's not like nobody ever gets feelings about it. If you're
Yeah.
like, well, I think I've got something for this ending, you might tell everybody what it is, but and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's perfect, or they'll be like, maybe this. So usually, even if somebody thinks like, well, I've got the perfect part for this, if they're wrong, then we just talk it out, kind of thing. Um, it just all kind of flows together pretty organically. I think partially because we've all known each other so long. I
Yeah.
mean, even Tribe One, I've known the least time, I think, and I've still been close friends with him for at least 7 years. So like we really all have just worked together so long, and we've done it. The big thing though is like if we don't work on it together, they won't like none of us will work on it. Like I'll
Yeah.
work on the beats alone because I do that anyway. But like if we don't do that, it's hard for any of us to stay on task with it. It
Yeah.
makes it way easier when you're like actually chatting, can see each other writing.
Yeah.
Like it feels much more like being together and working on it.
Yeah.
Without that webcam element, it would be harder for me for
Yeah.
sure to work on that kind of stuff. But whenever we're actually getting together, it's usually there's definite like there's definite competition between all of us. Anytime we work on this kind of stuff, everybody wants to have the best verse. They want to be the one that like roasts everybody else off the track. So there's definitely always like that is motivation to do something dope is like
Yeah.
you want to be the winner on any given track. And it's not a negative competition. Nobody's getting mad about it or anything, but there definitely is always that. Even when we were on tour, like when we did the No Friends tour many years ago, um, every night, at the end of the night, we were like talking about the show, like, well, who do you think won tonight? Like, this is like how we would put it directly, like, well, who do you think won tonight? Like, And a lot of times it was Niles because Niles is the best rapper I've ever known.
He does have some good rhymes.
Yeah,
I like the way his flow is. He's got a good
he's
flow.
he's so good. It's infuriating.
All right, last question.
Yep.
So I honestly can't remember the song, but there was an Adam Warrock song in which he says something to the effect of one of his favorite things is when he plays you a song that he's done, and then you say you hate it.
Yeah.
What do you think
I
he meant
remember
by
what song
that?
you're talking about because I don't know. He made a video for that song, but I don't know if that song
I
actually
think it's
ended
this
up on
song.
anything.
Is it this song?
Yes, yeah, I think it is. And he actually in the video he holds up the original No Friends logo
Yeah.
um, on his phone, like when he says that part about me saying I hate it. I think that was definitely always a thing. Like one of the things that worked really well with me and Eugene was we gave each other both like really unfiltered feedback, and they definitely knew if they sent me something, and especially if I said the beat was good, then they knew it was great. Like,
Yeah.
Because, and I, to be frank, there were a lot of beats Eugene used, Adam Warrock used over the years that I was like, I genuinely hate this beat that you're using. Some of the beats he chose, I would have never rapped on, but he obviously has a lot
Well,
of really good records.
when you're
It works in
releasing
the
a
context
song,
of an album.
when you're releasing a song every day,
Yeah.
like he did.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big thing with the way he left was like, that's not sustainable in any kind of long term way. I think he definitely burned himself out. I think
Yeah.
pretty much the entire time I knew him while he was working on music, and we still talk and stuff, but the entire time he was working on music, I think like me and Tribe One told him he needed to take a vacation like at least once a month. Like, but he is a very like he's a very all or nothing person. He'll keep just going at 110% until he's burned out. So
Yeah.
I think that's basically what happened. I he's asked me multiple times to do like to produce comeback record. At one point we had done those albums based on opera stuff a couple years ago. Like we got asked to do some music for a musical at one point. There's been like little things pop up that he asked me if I want to do with him. And then it's even got to the point of me making the beats for some of it. But then he never ends up doing it. Like I don't, there was a point where I was like, well, he'll come back to it eventually, if only just for the nostalgia of it and for his own like gratification or whatever. But I think he's really just done. And I think he really enjoys, that he did what he did. He kind of like got to the top of what he could with it. And then he just walked away. I think he likes that. I think he's happy at the job he's doing now, working for a university. So I think he's just like, I think he just was good. I tried to get him to do the last No Friends family reunion, and he was like, I can't. And once he couldn't do that, I was kind of like, well, that's probably like that. Not going
Yeah.
to keep asking.
He's got stuff. I mean, I still listen to his stuff. So, and
Yeah.
I think I sent him something a year or so ago and just said, whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna do, but just know that your people are still listening to your music, and if you never do anything again, you got stuff out there that people are still listening to, and so you put something out in the world that obviously means something to folks, and that's gonna live on.
Yeah. I
So
think like the last thing I really suggested to him was just like, let's just do an EP and not put it under our names, like not tell anybody we did it, and just put it on Bandcamp. Because one of those opera mixtapes we did, it like there was something happened with the opera company, like they changed management, like as our release was supposed to come out, that they paid us to do, and they never promoted it. So they created a website for it, put it up on the internet, but because of the way the website was done, you couldn't find it through Google, and there was like no way for people to find out about it. And like Eugene was like, should we even should we just like see if anybody like finds it on their own and just not say anything? I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And so we didn't tell anybody, and nobody found it for like a year or two until I was on some podcast and I just mentioned it in passing. Like that one time we had put out a release and nobody ever found out about it because it didn't get promoted. And somebody finally found it that way. But like, I, I don't know. I loved the idea of like, well, let's just like we both have other rap names that we used like when we were younger for other projects that weren't like he wasn't Adam Warrock, he was something else. And I've always used Mikal kHill since I was like 13, even whenever I was doing non-rap stuff. But I had another name I used on some other material that nobody ever heard. So I was like, we can just use like those alternate rap names we had that nobody knows. And then we just put out this record and then don't tell anybody and just see how long it takes anybody to find it. And he thought the idea was funny, but then we never did it. So yeah. I still think that would be awesome, though. I love that.
That would be pretty awesome. All right.
But,
well, I really appreciate you coming on here for this. I really had a good time.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. I wish we had more audience participation, but I'm still pretty low level. I mean, I think I have a full 27 subscribers.
Nice. That's not bad.
Of which, I subscribe to your YouTube channel, and I pretty much do all my YouTubing on the TV through my Roku.
Yeah.
So I'm always skimming through my list of subscribers, and I keep getting I go to Mikal kHill, and I'm like, man, when's he gonna do something on his YouTube?
Yeah, I need to actually do something. I've been like thinking about how I need to do like a music video or something for a while. But I just haven't gotten around to it. I got hit with like copyright strikes on some of my videos.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, and then I just kind of quit putting things up. I was doing a thing for a while where I was doing these. I called them like Song Flip Fridays. Aw, hello, dear. I assume that means my wife and kids are watching. But anyway, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. I just kind of like, I was doing these Song Flip Friday things where I was rapping over songs that weren't rap, doing other songs of mine. So I did like my Smash Brothers song over some of the music from Smash Brothers, and I rapped one of my songs over a Sleater Kinney song. I rapped one of my songs over Elliott Smith instrumental that was unreleased. Different stuff like that. And I was having fun doing those. But then once I got those copyright strikes, I was like, well, if I keep doing these, then I'm probably going to get flagged. And then they're going to end up like locking down my account and screwing me over. So I just kind of quit. I have a bunch of the private live streams that I did for the Patreon subscribers that are hidden on my YouTube. I might make some of those like public, or at least I should probably relink some of them to the actual Patreon group on Facebook. My Patreon used to be like much more regimented with what I did with the subscribers, because I did private YouTube concerts every month, but then like YouTube started flagging my live performances. But it was weird because they weren't even like, I was doing live performances on acoustic guitar with no beats. Like they were all acoustic performances. I wasn't sampling. I wasn't playing any of the samples, wasn't playing any of the beats. It was just me on acoustic guitar. And they would flag it within 30 seconds of me starting the stream. And it happened every time. It would just lock it down. And it got to where I couldn't do the performances. So then I started doing some stuff on Twitch. And I quit doing Twitch because of weird trolls coming in the streams, which kind of like soured me on it. I am going to resume those though. Like I did the Fake 4 live performances twice now, and I've really enjoyed those live streams, and it felt like a good way to actually like play my music for people. So I'm going to try to start doing monthly Twitch performances again, but hopefully Twitch will not hit me with any weird copyright strikes for my own music.
Yeah, I get like I do. Just Another Fanboy is primarily an audio podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
I put audio versions of the episodes up here on my YouTube channel. And
Mm-hmm.
the last two episodes I did were kind of a year in review. It was just clip shows of episodes I did for the year. But I put it all. I put a bunch of songs in there from Kirby Crackle, and I got a hold of him, and he said that was fine. He didn't have any issues with it. But I put one up, and I put him up early, and I schedule him to to release the next day, and I had the copyright claim on it going before it had even released. I had just put
Yeah.
it up to schedule it, and it's but I don't worry about those too much because they just basically they tell me you just can't monetize this video, and
Yeah.
I got 27 subscribers. I ain't monetizing nothing right now.
Yeah.
So,
I don't monetize. I don't actually monetize my stuff either. I did get the last time I signed into my YouTube. There's remix. I did a remix of a Sage Francis song a long time ago, and there's a copyright. It's not a copyright strike, but it's a copyright claim,
mhm.
and the music is entirely mine. But it says that it's a Sage Francis song, and it is like his acapella on it. But I was like, well, that's kind of weird. But I don't know. He might have copyrighted the remix because I know he was planning to put it on a record at one point, but I haven't heard anything about that in years, so I don't know. But I have seen that happen where there's even like claims that somebody else has a copyright on something, and it'll be something that's mine entirely and not anybody else's. But it'll have somebody else's song name on it. But I don't monetize my videos, so they're not making any money
Yeah.
off of that anyway, and neither am I. So I don't care. Um, my digital distributor puts like the albums on YouTube, so I don't have to actually do that. But all my records that are distributed digitally are on YouTube as like they're searchable. But
Okay.
I know that generates some kind of revenue, but I don't not enough to care about.
Yeah. All
Streaming does
right.
not pay well.
No, that's what I've heard. I try to buy when I buy music from indie folks, I try to do it all on Bandcamp, and it's nice when they do the thing on Fridays where
Mhm.
they don't take a cut of that. That's kind of cool, but
Yeah, that's
um,
been great. We made our we even that EP we did is Pay What You Want, the 2 weeks notice one. We made a good amount off of that, like way more than I expected for a free release.
well, it,
Um,
it got up to number 6 at one point, didn't it?
yeah, it hit number 6 on the charts.
Nice.
I was like, holy shit. Did not expect that to happen because unless people choose to pay for it, and they didn't have to do that at all,
Yeah.
um, it won't chart normally. So I was super impressed that and flattered that people
Well, it's
wanted
a
to
it's a
support it
good
like that.
EP. I mean, from that first song, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, the moment that kicks in with the thing about Liam Neeson, I was like, oh crap, I forgot about that with Liam Neeson. That's right, they got that Liam Neeson song on that other
Yeah,
album. Yeah.
yeah, because I like whenever I was like, God, what should we change that song or like go back and like, and Niles was like, no, it's already made. Maybe we just reference it in something later. And I was like, all right. Like I knew when we did that song, I knew I was going to put that line in there. I had that. That
Yeah.
was the only line I knew in advance I was going to write. Um, uh,
That's
that
kind
was
of a that's I tell you what though, that's kind of a sad commentary on 2020. The fact that I hear that and I had totally there's so many things have come out this year about so many people that you almost
yeah,
have to have a spreadsheet. It's like, all
yeah.
right, I'm gonna go watch this new movie. Who's in it? Let's check the spreadsheet and see if they're racists or not, because there's
It's like a
so much stuff is coming out.
unrelenting horror show. I mean, I think like with the older dudes, so much shit was like acceptable, 30
Yeah.
years ago. And like a lot of, especially in acting, you see it with older musicians too. But I think like with acting, it's like a whole other world. A lot of these dudes, they got famous like 30 years ago and they're still famous and they're just out of touch. They don't, and like to them, it's still all the same. They don't realize like the world has evolved.
No, and they I mean he apparently thought it was okay to just say that. Just,
Yeah.
stand up
Yeah.
in front of the world and go, yeah, I was prowling the streets. I was going to kill a black person. You know,
Yeah. I'm like, what did you think
that's
was
not okay
gonna
to say,
like, what did you think was gonna happen
right?
from
Well,
that?
yeah, exactly. What he obviously thought that he was saying the right thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
He thought it was okay
it's
because
really
yeah.
disappointing. It's like Qui-Gon, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, but like I said in the song, hopefully we aren't like jinxing wholesome stars. Hopefully we don't
Yeah,
hear anything bad about Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah, you didn't have to learn a lesson. I can't put any. This is how we out people. We name a song after them,
And then the
and
bad
we'll
stuff.
find out later they're racist.
I mean, this is the thing that's the thing with the nerdcore stuff in general, and one of the reasons that I've moved away from a lot of the tribute stuff, which I only really ever did the tribute stuff normally with Eugene. I had other people ask me, like Dr. Awkward wanted to do a Hunger Games mixtape with me at one point, and I told him no. Like, other people have asked me about doing that kind of stuff, but I didn't want to become the guy who only does these like weird tribute
Yeah,
projects, and I only wanted to do stuff I was like genuinely really interested in. But it's also a thing where like I don't want to do music that is like beholden to anybody else's behavior or
yeah,
ideas. Like, so, and like when you're doing stuff that's based off somebody else's work, it's like unavoidable that's going to happen.
that's that's why it's great that a song like Always isn't specifically, nowhere in that song do you mention any character names.
Yeah.
Because who'd have thought, hey, let's do a Harry Potter themed EP. Who'd have thought that
Yeah.
she'd be
Yeah.
coming out and running her
Yeah.
mouth about stuff?
Being her. Yeah. It was like so disappointing to watch her behave the way she has in the past year. And I mean, I guess there's been elements of it for a couple years, but it's just, yeah. And it sucks because it's like there's a cool community that's sprung up around that book that exists separately from it. There's like that whole Wiz Rock community. Everybody I've ever
Yep.
met from that's been really cool. They really, that community kind of embraced us when we released that mixtape because there's not a lot of rap stuff in that scene. Most people are doing like punk and stuff, or filk as they call it, I guess. But yeah, that was one of the things that made me kind of like want to steer away from doing too many things like that can be like tied too directly to a single person.
Yep.
Or someone else's ideas. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't ever want to feel like I'm promoting someone's ideas I don't ascribe to.
Well, and yeah, you almost feel like anymore if you're going to, even with like my podcast, I read a comic and then I want to talk about it, and there's a part of me that goes, well, are these guys? I don't know if you know about Comicsgate. Are these guys
Oh God.
Comicsgaters? Or do they promote
Unfortunately,
hate
I know a
speech?
bit
Do I
about it.
want to talk about this comic book?
Yeah. Yeah, I ended up knowing about that stuff. I don't really follow comics anymore. And it's not out of I would have the interest. It's just like I don't have the time and I don't have the money. It's so
Yeah. Oh yeah.
expensive to keep up with comics. Same reason I quit playing Magic. It's just so expensive to keep up. But I have a lot of friends who make comics and who are big comics fans, so I end up exposed to that stuff. And like even the artists that we work with for our flyers or album art and stuff, they're all touched by that stuff whenever
Yep.
when those things happen. Every scene kind of has its own problems, and I'm in a bunch of like weird like micro scenes, so it's always like I don't know. It's the same kind of stuff happens in every one of those scenes
Yeah.
like that though. All those little communities. There's always some poisonous element.
Yep. Yeah. It's sad. Hate is everywhere.
Yeah. The chair materialized for a minute. I saw it.
That's weird.
the thing I have that I don't have a green screen, so behind me and around me is actually like the whole room. So every now and then you'll see like little trace of something pop up. Sorry.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Maybe we can get together again some other time. Next time you got something coming out, we'll get together and we'll talk some more.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks,
Have
man.
a good night, man.
I'm gonna try to disconnect this to stop the live stream without disconnecting us. We'll see what happens.
Okay, cool.